Good morning, everybody. Hey, it's Denise from Lazy K Homestead. Well, today this video is going to be making sourdough bread from sourdough starter without yeast. Now, I had previously done a whole series, 9 days, of how to make sourdough starter. So if you've got your sourdough starter, come along and make this bread with me. This is a recipe that I got from a friend. She's very much a traditionalist when it comes to sourdough. So that means no yeast, just the starter. This will make one loaf, and it's going to be a round loaf, kind of like you'd find in the store. When I make my sourdough for home, I use 1 packet of yeast and sourdough starter. And it's basically a loaf bread, and Willis really likes that, and we cut it off for sandwiches and stuff like that. Okay, so let's get started. I wanted to show you yesterday from my starter. This was from day 9 when I told you it would come out of the jar, and there it did. I wanted to leave it so you could see. What a mess. But anyway, we are going to start with this recipe for this loaf of bread. This recipe is going to be a 2-day recipe. That is because I'm going to let it rise, the second rise in the refrigerator for 20 to 24 hours. And what that does is gives it a chewier texture. So, and it'll look more like a traditional loaf. So we'll say traditional. Okay, also, before I start with all this, I want to show you what you're going to need. I've got my little proof basket, and I got this off Amazon. It was $16. It came with the muslin cover. You're going to want to wash everything and dry everything before you use it because it is going to be food. So I did that, and when I got it, it also came with a bench scraper, nice little plastic bench scraper, and it also came with, this is a razor blade, and you use this to cut the little cuts you see and makes the fancy designs in your breads. So I'm going to put that back in there. It is very sharp, so you don't want that around children for sure. It has the little guard there, so I would keep it on there until you have to. But that was like $16 and change on Amazon, and this is a 10-inch bowl, so I thought that was not a bad deal at all. Okay, if you don't have one of these, what you're going to use is your regular bowl, and I would put parchment paper in it, covered with flour, because you're going to put flour in here too before you put your dough in for the second rise. So you don't have to have anything fancy like this, but if you have a proof bowl, that'll be nice. And also what this does, it gives you those really cool grooves here. Okay, and then with this, you're going to, well, I don't want to say you have to have this, but it is good to have a Dutch oven. And what I'm going to use is this to bake my bread in it after it's done the second rise. My cat wants to come in. And you want to make sure that it's oven safe. That means you can use it in the oven without any fear of it cracking. Okay, I'm going to use that, and make sure you have a lid. Okay, so that will be for tomorrow. If you have a Dutch oven, use that. If you don't have a Dutch oven, you can use a stock pot that is stainless steel, and it has a lid. And just make sure that it's not going to have anything on it that will melt. That's very important. If you don't have anything like that, you can just put it on a cookie sheet or a baking stone if you got one of those. So there's a lot of options there. Okay, got that out of the way. Let me go ahead and start with this. What we're going to do is, with a clean jar, we're going to weigh out what we need for this recipe as far as starter goes, because we are going to feed our starter. Now, there are some people that like to feed their starter the night before. I'm not one of them. I like to feed my starter the day of. Baking may go into the evening, especially if it's not going to be a second rise in the fridge. My other recipe that I have a video on, is about a 4 to 5 hour recipe. And so if I start early in the morning, feed my starter, wait for it to get nice and active and bubbly, and you should know what that is by now. Couple hours. This is going to be a couple hours from what her recipe says. And then I just start my bread. Okay, so here we go. Let me get a spoon. I'm going to go ahead and put the tripod down so you can see what I'm doing. We are going to mix this starter up from yesterday, and of course, you know, you need to do a visual inspection and also smell it and make sure your starter is good, even if you've taken it out of the fridge. Okay, and there are lots of great bubbles in there. This recipe calls for 75 grams, and I'm going to go ahead and weigh that out of starter. And I believe that comes to about 1/3 of a cup. And again, this is only one loaf. Okay, there we go. The rest of the starter's going in the fridge. I'll, of course, clean that mess off the side, but it is going to go in the fridge for later use. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we are going to put in, I'm going to use bread flour because that's what I'm going to use for my bread recipe. And we're going to tare back to 0. And we're going to put 75 grams of flour in here, right on top. Okay, a little bit too much. There we go, 75. And then we're going to tare back to 0. Room temperature water, 75 grams or milliliters. Feeding your starters always 1 to 1 to 1. So whatever you measure out your starter to be, that's what your flour is going to be and your water. Okay, there we go. Turn that off. We're going to mix this up. And then we are going to put this over on the stove or in the warm place that we know that's going to be at least 75 to 80 degrees. Okay. This looks really good. You're just mixing it up just like we always have been in our video. No dry flour bits anywhere. And there it is. Okay. Smells really good. I can't wait. Nice and tart and soury. Soury. I don't even know if that's a word. It may not be. I'm good at making up words. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and put this over on the stove. Just the starter we fed. Okay. This is the exciting part, is when you can use your starter and bake bread and all kinds of good stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and sign off for now. The video will continue with what we're going to do after the starter is bubbly and ready to go. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Well, probably a couple hours. Okay, guys, we're back. Putting together the sourdough bread traditionally without any yeast at all. And it's going to make one loaf. So we've got our starter over here on the stove, and it is ready to go. You can see it has risen a lot since we put it in there. It was about down to here. And let me put this tripod down so you can see the bubbles. There you go. Nice. It is ready to roll. Bring my camera over a little bit more. Okay, so with this recipe, it calls for 400 grams of flour, and I'm using bread flour, so I already had measured that out on my scale. I'm going to tare it back to 0, and now it calls for 220 milliliters or grams of lukewarm water. And I went ahead and warmed this up on the stove because it was just a little bit too warm for my taste. I mean, too cold for my taste. I went ahead and took the temperature of the water because I wanted to make sure it wasn't too hot since I did warm it up on the stove. And it is about 113 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and pour in 220 milliliters or grams of lukewarm water. So I'm just going to go ahead and pour it right here on top of the flour. Being careful not to go over. Okay, there we go there. And I have measured out 2 teaspoons of salt. Now that goes in as well. And then we are going to add the entire starter that we fed this morning. So that's going to be this whole thing right here. Let me get a spatula. I'm going to go ahead and add that to this as well. It is nice and fermented and yum. Oh, it smells good too. See how kind of elastic it is and foamy, and that is a really great starter. Get all that you possibly can out. Now, her recipe says that you can put it in a food processor. My food processor isn't one of the big ones. It's actually old. I'd say it's not an antique, but it's working its way there. Okay. So, I'm going to get one of my dough whisks, and I'm going to go ahead and put this together just like this, and you're going to knead for 10 minutes. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add this salt, and I'm going to add just a little bit of honey. Her recipe doesn't call for honey, but I always put that in my sourdough, in my bread. So, well, we'll say maybe a teaspoon. Just put it in there. This is from RB's. So excited. There we go. Maybe a little bit more. Just eyeballing it. All right, we're just going to go ahead and put this together with this dough whisk. Okay. So this has one rise that we're going to do for about 3 hours once I get this kneaded for 10 minutes. Now, if you have a food processor or you've got a dough hook on your mixer, go right ahead and use that. I'm going to go ahead and put that in here, and I'm going to knead this just right in this bowl because that'll be easier for me. Okay, I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, guys, here we are. I've got the kneaded for 10 minutes dough in my greased bowl, and we are going to go ahead and put plastic over this. Just gently put it over it, just like so. Okay, just kind of floating it on there, and then we're going to put just a tea towel on top, and we're going to let this rise for 3 hours, and then after 3 hours we'll come back and we will stretch it, and then we will put it in here, and we will put it in our refrigerator for 20 to 24 hours. For tomorrow we'll bake it. Okay, guys, be back in a little bit. Okay, so we have let this dough rise for 3 hours. Didn't rise super a lot, but I'm going by her recipe. So let's hope that this turns out. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. That is the dough. Let me go ahead and put the tripod down so you see what I'm doing. Okay. And it says to kind of do this, pull, fold in thirds, and again and again. Okay. I don't know what that was. Something on there. Always something in the flour. So, and that's supposed to be it. And then you go ahead and you put it back in your bowl, like so. And I'll go ahead and stick this in the fridge. And then we actually have to let it rest in the morning after we stick it in the fridge for 24 hours. Okay, guys, it is almost 24 hours later, and I wanted to show you what we've got from the refrigerator. The sourdough bread there that we made yesterday. Now, the next step, I'm supposed to turn this out onto a floured surface and kind of pull it and let it come to room temperature. But I'm not sure if I'm going to do that or not. I hate to see, I've got it in my bowl, and it's got these really pretty, going to have these grooves. So I'm just going to go and turn it out and see what happens here. Well, I guess it's stuck. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I have to do that anyway. All right, because it was kind of cold. All right, so that's what I am going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and put some more flour in this bowl. Now, I think this is called a Brannon bowl. Maybe pronouncing it wrong. Okay, there we go. But as you can see, it had that those nice grooves, and that's what I was really looking for. Okay, so what I'm going to do is kind of just stretch it again and fold it into thirds. Okay, now we're going to do this. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and try to get all that together. I hope I don't have too much flour here. Like I said, this is a recipe that I've only tried with you guys. Okay, forming into a ball. All right. It is nice and elastic, so. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put it in here. And I'm just going to let it come to room temperature. And that is going to let it rise again. And then we're going to bake it on 450. And I'm going to put it in this Dutch oven. And it's not exactly round. It's more oblong. So probably when I put it in here, I will just go ahead and drop it in there and let this create whatever it's going to create as far as size and shape. So that's where we are now. And I'm going to go ahead and put that on top of there. Hopefully this will rise nicely. Now again, this isn't going to rise like a yeast bread. So don't be surprised if it's kind of, you know, short like so. It's not going to have a real nice rise on it. Now, I was talking to her, the creator of this, and she said you can add a little yeast if you wanted to, but I wanted to make this completely traditional because that's the way she believes in traditional sourdough. So this is where we are. I'll see you in about an hour, and we will bake. And I'm going to go ahead and preheat my oven at 450. Okay, it has been an hour later, and it's at room temperature. And I'm going to go ahead and put this dough into the, oh yeah, it fit right down in there, into the Dutch oven. There we go. It's down in there. And I'm going to put the lid on. And the reason you cook it in a Dutch oven, it creates steam and for a crunchy crust. So hopefully this all works out. So I've got my oven preheated at 450. I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. And I'm going to bake it. Well, I'm going to have to take one of the racks down. I didn't realize this was so big. All right, go ahead and put that in there. And we are going to bake that for 40 minutes on 450, and we'll be back. Hopefully it'll be a success. Okay, guys, I'm back. I've got the sourdough bread out of the oven, and I am pleasantly surprised. There it is. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? It rose just gorgeous. I had to say, I had my doubts. So I am super thrilled. I'm going to let it cool a little bit in here, and then I'll take it out, and I'll be back and show you the finished product. Hey, guys, I got it out of the Dutch oven, and here it is. How pretty is that? And look how thick it rose. So I'm really tickled, and that is just with sourdough starter.
It really smells good, too.
Willa said it really smells good, too. So let me get a cutting board. I should have had that already over here. He just got home with groceries. So you'll have to excuse the house. All right. Let me put this down so you can see me cut it. Look at that. Isn't that neat? See how it made the indentations of that Brannon basket? I probably cut it a little bit too early. Oh, yeah. Wow. Oh, it smells wonderful. I need to let it cool. Let it cool a little bit, but that's nice. It has a nice little cracks and everything in there. Okay, guys. So there you are. Sourdough starter bread. No yeast. Hope you try the recipe. I'm really tickled with this. So we'll see you soon. Please like, share, and subscribe. Me and Willis are going to try this bread with some butter. See you soon. Bye.